Alright, so it is day 45 and it's time for the morning weigh-in. Alright, here goes nothing. Alright, I got the scale set here.
Your weight is 303.8 pounds.
Whew, dodged a bullet. Last week we were 305. I was a little worried about maybe a slight gain or a plateau because of the extra workout effort that I put in the other day when I was out military playing outside like a true Gen Xer. And yeah, so I was a little concerned by that. Let me get somewhere where the music isn't playing. Alright, sorry about that. Alright, so we did experience some weight loss. Not quite as much as I'd hoped for, but I'm thinking, just like someone else reminded me in a comment this morning, that when you do a lot of physical activity, your body tends to retain more water, so that weight could easily drop down further than that over the course of the week. But we won't know till next Monday whether that's the case or not. Hopefully next Monday we'll be under that 300. It would be nice to lose that 3.8 pounds and be at least 300 or under would really make my day. And I think that's going to be the case. So this is going to be a little bit crazy of a topic that I'm going to get into today. I had someone comment on a video of mine about my chili dogs that I put out last week, talking about how it was disgraceful and this does not represent Generation X and you should be ashamed of yourself for putting out such content because we did such great and beautiful and wonderful things. Okay, sorry about that. Had a phone call, had to answer it. Now, where was I? This is another reason I created this channel with the name Latchkey Generation X. We're going to get into it. Now, the commenter just so happened to be born in the year of 1979. He so graciously posted it for me right in the middle of dissing my content to my face. So, when you do that, you deserve my rebuttal, and this is it. As of 2017, they started talking about a microgeneration. The microgeneration is called the Zennials. They consider themselves not Generation X, but not quite millennial either. They're like a microgeneration that falls somewhere between, I think they said 1977 to 1985. And this makes a lot of sense to me because I was there. I witnessed the birth of the Zennials, and I never did understand it. They did not fit in well with the Gen Xers like myself. There are a lot of them out there trying to speak for Gen X, and really they have no idea how things of Gen X were. I was born in 71, so I was about 8 or 9 years his senior. So the chili it got it fitted over me making hot dogs with Bunker Hill canned chili. Coming home to that, letting myself in and making food that we were allowed to eat back in those times when I was in elementary school. He has no idea what he's talking about because he was born a lot later. By the time his generation come along, I'm calling it this generation. Because it was a cultural difference. But by the time he was able to become his own latchkey kid, because they were technically let themselves in as well. I will give them that. Uh, Man, he was just trying to rip me one, but I set him straight in a nice but also not so nice way of letting him know that, before you attack me, maybe you need to find out who you are first. And I give him a link to some of these Xennial motivational speakers that are out there, and maybe to let him know a little bit about who he is and why there's a difference between what I'm saying and he does not agree with. He does not know Gen X the way I did. Let's face it, in '89 he would have been 10 years old. In '89 I was, in my teens, heading toward my early 20s. So, I just politely put him in his place. Now, to expand on that further, I want to say that the reason we ate things like the chili dogs is because it was still in the 1970s when I was in grade school. And we did not have commercialized products like pre-frozen pizza bagels out there, that we could just slip into the microwave and that's what we ate. I am just telling people how myself and my slightly older siblings, who are also Gen Xers, used to lose weight. How we performed diet. How we performed diet because we did not have the general information. We did not have computers to log into to find out. We had to discover ways for ourselves. Part of being Gen X is being able to adapt and overcome. Not always in that specific order, because we did not just adapt to anything that's thrown at us, that we do not trust the authoritative figures, so to speak. We do not trust what media and popular culture tells us to go along with in such a way that the Xennials did, because trust me, they were pushed into the culture that they became a part of. I say this because I was there. I know. I watched the early 90s. We had music that was deemed hair metal by the so-called Xennials and into the millennials, but we didn't call it that back in the 70s and 80s. We called it metal. That's all we called it. It was just rock and roll. It was good rock and roll, and it was mainstream. It was mainstream music. It's what we listened to. It was a real threat to the politicians. They even pulled in Dee Snider from Twisted Sister to kind of, as a way to kind of attack the culture, but it kind of backfired on them because Dee Snider was a little more intelligent than they had hoped for. They did not just bring him in there and have their way with him the way they wanted to. This was back during the Al Gore days. They tried to put him down in such a way that, they wanted to, they really didn't like the culture. So they wanted to drive it in a different direction. So in those times, we did not know how, we did not know that media, and when I say media, I don't mean just news. I mean cultural media like MTV and record labels were a part of politics in those times. We had no idea that it was a thing. They were such together. We thought it was two separate entities. We did not know no better. And it reflects on the death of hair metal more than anything else. If you want to look into that, this is going to be a long one, folks. I got a lot to say. But yeah, there was a real cultural divide that was pushed on to the Xennial micro generation. starting with Nirvana. They like to throw that one on the Gen Xers. But Nirvana came out in 91. We had, my generation started in 1965. So you got to think there was a good 23 years of musical content before the grunge movement came into play. They tried to push that grunge movement on Gen X because it was such a failure, and it happened right at the tail end of Gen X. You'll see a lot of motivational speakers talking about that. Grunge did not define the music of Gen X. Man, we had good music. We had Beat It by Michael Jackson in the early 80s. We had all kinds of hair metal that represented our generation. We had, we even had music, from people like Prince, real musical masters of their craft, That was the music of my generation, okay? Do not hang us with that grunge crap and the new rock movement. That does not befall or explain anything about a Gen Xer. Heck no. We were caught unaware. We had no idea. We kind of accepted grunge because it was rock and roll. It was like a new form. We did not know that in 1990 that they created a separate entire genre for rock just to appease this new rock and grunge movement. It was its own thing. They separated it from mainstream is what they did. Okay? Don't believe me? Look at the year Nirvana come out. The most famous song that grunge ever put out was Smells Like Teen Spirit. You look at the Hot 100 singles charts for 1991, and Guns N' Roses is above Nirvana and their Smells Like Teen Spirit. Sure, they had a lot of record sales. That's what all the hype is about. They had a lot of huge record sales in the 30s of millions or whatever, the case may be. Of course they did, but that was because we were the first victims of cancel culture, and we did not know what that was. We did not know how to defend against it the way we do now. But because of that, we have overcome and adapted, huh? And, you look at the feud between Axl Rose of Guns N' Roses and Kurt Cobain of Nirvana. Axl tried to extend an olive branch to Kurt Cobain and try to keep rock as a thing that was all together. Now, in the 80s, we did not disrespect the musical geniuses of previous decades. We accepted bands like Kiss and AC/DC and Aerosmith and you name it, any of those bands, Lionel Richie, just anyone who was making music in the 60s and 70s. We just fell in love with that too, and we just had a bigger variety we had a bigger catalog than the mentality of the Zennials and beyond. Okay? We realized that music was a variety, and we loved all forms of it. And we did like the new forms of grunge when it first came out. But they hit us with hard-hitting songs like Smells Like Teen Spirit, which was a troll, what you kids call a troll these days. We were trolled into listening to that music because, Teen Spirit was girl's deodorant. He named his song after a girl's deodorant, okay? Look it up. Sorry about that. So like I was saying, we were trolled into listening to and believing a cultural shift that was pushed on us. It was manufactured, okay? And people have been following that path for years now without anyone ever speaking up about it. Well, there are people out there to speak up about it, but our voices are not heard. They don't want you to know. Like I say, we were willing to accept, the new coming music as long as we could put it in a catalog with everything else. So that's where the divide came in. And I have grown to despise grunge and new rock. In fact, let's ask Google ourselves. Let's see what the experts have to say about it. What happened to rock and roll?
Here's a summary from HS Insider, Los Angeles Times. Though hundreds, even thousands, of new rock bands have produced eminent albums, the spirit of rock and roll has ceased and fully demolished among the majority. Rock music is still alive, but the spirit itself has completely abated over the past 25 years.
Like I said, it's been on a decline ever since. And the reason for that is it was a cultural shift. When you had the rock and mainstream, it had a strong female presence. Okay. What they did when they created the heavier and more suicidal and the depressive type of rock that come from the 90s up, and the reason it's on a decline, and they sit there and admit it to you, you heard it with your own ears, is because they took the female out of the equation. Rock became a male dominated genre, worse than it already was. Also, it was separated from mainstream by calling it its own thing. They even come up with musical channels. I got way more proof, All you got to do is look through the Hot 100 charts of the 90s, and you will see plenty of bands still out there like Bon Jovi and Aerosmith and let's see who else. There was a few more. I can't think of all of them off the top of my head. Not that many who are still hitting the Hot 100s, and most of the time they were beating out the grunge and new rock music that was coming along, who barely ever made the Hot 100s. That's how we measured music's popularity, by the Hot 100s. We did not have internet back then, so it was for what listener call in. I actually learned the other day that in 95, and this was the year after grunge had died, it was only a 4-year movement. How can that represent an entire generation, huh? That is the biggest bunch of crap I've ever heard. Maybe a micro generation. Oh, I'm sorry I had to go there, but I had to go there. But anyway, we were pushed out. We were pushed out in favor of, diverse driven political agendas. And it worked. It worked, and we let it happen. It's here now. And because of that, and through that, you see the rise in popular music that is independent, such as Tom MacDonald. Look at the work he's doing out there. He is putting out some great content, and he is really killing it through social media, and is not mainstream at all. And I love him. But yeah, the death of that creates the birth of something else. So Tom MacDonald is accused often of cultural appropriation, but is he really? Or is he just a victim of driven culture? Culture that was driven by political purpose in the first place. Of course, something like that's going to rise. Something beautiful is always born from chaos. And there you go, and you have Tom MacDonald. And he's unstoppable. That's all I'm going to say about that. But I do not apologize to some Zennial out there who thinks they have Generation X all figured out just because I do not believe. Just because I do not focus on all the big time cultural achievements of the generation. You know, I am just telling you a story through my personal experience. Okay, you got it. You do not have to listen to my content. You do not have to tune in. I will not be changing my channel name because I am proud of the food that we ate and the way we overcome, the way we would diet and lose weight with what we had in hand on the table. We knew how to do it with the foods we were given. And that's what my channel has been about the whole time. You can't just watch one of my videos and expect to know everything about me. So, I hope this knocks you down from your high horse a little bit. I will leave the same link in the description that I left him to explain a little more in depth about what a Zennial is and how it's became a thing, or it's fast becoming a thing. It is being driven by media and culture. And I just so happen to be a Gen Xer who agrees with it because I seen the detachment at the end of my generation going towards something else, and we were left scratching our heads, the ones who were deep into the generation, just like, what's going on? This ain't right. But here we are. Nothing we can do about it now but adapt and overcome. But maybe not in the way you think it should be. Maybe you need to look a little deeper into your own self before you criticize someone else. And that's all I got to say about that. Now, I'm going to move on with my day and continue to do what I always do. Now, if you liked what I had to say, be sure to subscribe to the channel for future videos where I will talk about these type of things more often as we go along. And also, if you disliked what I had to say, also subscribe to my channel so you can put in a well-mannered discussion in the comments about how I'm wrong. And if I'm wrong, I'm a Gen Xer, man. I can adapt and overcome. I can admit when I am wrong, but Google says otherwise. You Zennials were the first, to come along or grow up during the computer boom, the internet boom. So, don't you believe everything Google tells you? It sure told you straight a few minutes ago when I played it for you. All right, I'm done. Done with my rant. The last thing you want is my attention.